lawmaker from the state of Florida, and hope you enjoy this very warm winter morning. Like Chris Christie, Rick Scott has had his own share of outrageous moments during his term as governor. His reckless decision-making and callous behavior have resulted in wasted tax dollars, struggling working families, and wasted opportunities for a better quality of life for Floridians. Even before entering office, Rick Scott faced scrutiny and scandal when, as CEO of a company he ran, Medicare fraud was discovered that cost taxpayers millions of dollars. And when he got to the governor's office, he rewarded his former colleagues at the scandal-plagued firm with taxpayer handouts. Like Christie's recent staff changes, Scott's administration has been marred with staff turnover, including his own lieutenant governor, who, after being connected to a sweepstakes cafe with questionable legal activity, resigned, leaving Florida without a lieutenant governor for close to a year. But it doesn't stop there. Besides mismanagement, he's also pursued unethical and undemocratic voter purges intended to cast eligible Florida voters from the voting rolls. The motivation? Boosting his own re-election chances. In other words, he can't do it on the policy, so let's figure out other ways to win an election. Even though voter protection groups have identified eligible citizens caught up in the state's attempt to remove registered voters from the voting rolls, Rick Scott remains committed to purging voters and wasting more tax dollars. But Florida Democrats are going to hold him accountable, and the people of Florida are going to send him packing. With that, I'd like to introduce Val Demings. Val?
Thank you, Representative. Good morning, everyone. I am Val Demings, former Orlando Police Chief and candidate for Orange County Mayor. We're here this morning to talk about leaders who just don't seem to get it. Right here in Orange County, we have a mayor who broke the law by destroying public records that documented her communications on a vital issue to voters. I would say that's hardly a model for the county. Now she has something in common with today's guest, the governor of New Jersey. When Chris Christie took over the Governors Association, he said that Republican governors were going to be the model for the nation. Well, let's see if the state of Florida is better off under this new model. Let's take a look at transportation. Studies show that 43% of our fuel used is used while sitting still. What do you think the hardworking families of Florida think about that? A true visionary for our state would have embraced things like high-speed rail and the 24,000 jobs it would have created. But we know the story. Florida turned down the $2.4 billion in funding. Eliminating congestion on our roadways and creating jobs are vital issues to our voters. It's hardly a model for the state. So let's take a look at unemployment and underemployment. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, over 16% of the residents of Orange County live below the poverty level. And what about the big disconnect with Connect Florida? Unemployment claims website has not functioned for 3 months. I would say that unemployment and underemployment are vital issues to our voters. It's hardly a model that we can believe in. Most people get that public safety is the foundation on which great communities are built. However, the Orange County mayor right here eliminated the public safety director's position, which is proven not to be in the best interest of the citizens. Mayor Jacobs, Governor Scott, and Governor Christie have refused to be accountable and take responsibility for the missteps during their watch. They simply claim lack of knowledge, or they did not know, or it was someone else's fault. However, accountability is a vital issue to our voters, hardly a model for the nation. Orange County residents are fed up. Floridians have said enough is enough. We need leaders at home and in the state capitol who get it, who will work to improve those issues that impact real people's lives every day. Leaders who will fight for social and economic justice for citizens every day. The time is right, and the time is now. It is my pleasure to present the chair of the DNC, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Chief Demings, for that introduction, and Leader Pafford for joining me today. I didn't think I'd need to wear my coat that I wear in D.C. in my home state, but here we are. It is great to welcome to our state Chris Christie. Good to roll out the red carpet to Chris Christie in the Sunshine State. It's not every day that we have a governor visit Florida whose scandals burn so brightly that they outshine even those of our own scandal-plagued Governor Rick Scott. Governor Christie and Governor Scott do have a lot in common. They both seem to have a loose definition of ethics and of knowing what's right and what's wrong. And they both know a thing or two about creating massive traffic problems for their constituents. Governor Christie's most senior staff apparently shut down lanes to the busiest bridge in the world for political retribution. And we all remember when Governor Scott rejected high-speed rail funding to cater to the Tea Party. Both governors have clearly decided to put politics ahead of what's best for their constituents. Thanks to these two governors, both states are way too familiar with gridlock. It's interesting that while Chris Christie is spending the entire weekend in Florida with Governor Scott, they won't have a single public appearance. Either Chris Christie doesn't want to face the press, or Rick Scott doesn't want to be seen publicly with him. It's probably a little of both. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. Listen to these quotes from very recent news stories. This is ridiculous. It's stupid. Amateur hour. Talk about terrible timing. It's unfortunate timing. Mitt Romney's former Florida finance chair even called Chris Christie a maniacal bully. Here's the kicker. Every one of those comments was from a Republican. Not exactly a warm welcome. But I think former RNC Chairman Michael Steele said it best when he said, "My recommendation to Chris Christie is to basically, at this point, dial it back. Get off television. Get out of big public events and focus on the people of New Jersey." Now, before I get to what Christie's visit means for Florida in 2014, for Republican governors across the country, and for Christie's future political aspirations, I want to go over a few facts about Christie's bridge scandal. Let's recap. On September 9th of last year, some of Chris Christie's closest allies, including some of his top staff, shut down access lanes to the busiest bridge in the world, causing a massive traffic jam for 4 days. Christie's administration is believed to have shut down those lanes to punish the mayor of Fort Lee for not endorsing Christie, and did it without telling local police, first responders, schools, or the public. First responders were delayed. Children were late to their first day of school, and commuters struggled to get to work. Why? No one knew. For months, Chris Christie denied that he or his office had anything to do with the lane closures, and mocked reporters who asked him about the controversy. But as we found out in the last 10 days, that just wasn't true. And after almost a 2-hour press conference, Christie still denied any knowledge of the closure. Well, time will tell. Most of the information we know right now is the result of just a few subpoenas. This week, just yesterday, 20 more subpoenas were issued, including one for the governor's office and one for Chris Christie's own re-election campaign. There are multiple investigations ongoing right now, and I'm confident that they'll get to the bottom of what really happened. Now it's time for Governor Christie and all of his allies to cooperate with those investigations and take steps to restore the public trust that was broken by his administration. There's one thing that is abundantly clear. Chris Christie has created a culture of intimidation and retribution in his office that was directed at his own constituents. What his administration did to the people of Fort Lee and others crossing the bridge on those days was done because of the example Chris Christie set. This is the culture that he created. And the retribution didn't stop with the Bridgegate scandal. The day after the mayor of Jersey City, the second largest city in New Jersey, declined to endorse Chris Christie, state officials canceled meetings with the mayor, refused to meet with him, and his requests for help with Superstorm Sandy recovery fell on deaf ears. We've seen Chris Christie countless times yell at his own constituents at town halls, and then brag about it by putting the clips on YouTube. Christie's payback mentality didn't stop at politicians either. Christie used his line-item veto to gut funding for a Rutgers University professor just because that nonpartisan professor disagreed with the Republican redistricting plan. Now, we hear, just breaking right before we stepped up to the podium here, that there is an investigation that the lieutenant governor threatened withholding Sandy funds to the mayor of Hoboken to pressure the mayor to approve a development. This is a pattern of intimidation and potential retribution that Chris Christie has led. This is the tone that Christie set in his office, and it's the example that his staff followed. And that brings me to why we're here today. You know, Republicans, as Val said, like to brag and say that their governors are the future leaders of their party, and that they're the ones that know how to get things done. That they're different from the dysfunctional Republicans that I work with in Washington. Well, Republican governors elected Chris Christie as their chairman, and in recent weeks we've seen exactly how he gets the job done, by intimidation and retaliation. What we've seen with the bridge scandal is a look behind the curtain at exactly how Christie's office operates behind the scenes when they think no one's looking. That's the model that Republican governors have elevated and want to emulate, but it's not what's best for Floridians or the American people. Clearly, Rick Scott has no problem with it, but I guess that shouldn't surprise us, because as the expression goes, birds of a feather flock together. Over the course of the next year, we're going to be there to hold them accountable for this mentality and their records. When Rick Scott tries to paint over his obstructionist and Tea Party hardline record, we'll be there to remind Florida voters of the truth. And as Chris Christie tries to brush this scandal under the rug, we'll be there sticking up for New Jerseyans who still deserve answers. One thing is clear, Rick Scott has given us yet another example of his bad judgment. Thanks, we'll be glad to take